Hi there, it's Josh Phegan and we've got Matt Hayson with us today.
Hi there, Webland.
Yeah, we are. So we are in all sorts of different places where we've never been before. We're on Facebook, YouTube, the Josh Phegan website, and we're going live to help agents right the way across Australia, New Zealand. We've even got people tuning in from the UK today and also the UAE about what to do to really finish strong in 2016 and set up for a great 2017. Matt, there's no doubt that conditions have been quite brutal this year for a number of agents right the way across Australia, New Zealand and all of those marketplaces. We've had Brexit, with the potential of the UK leaving the EU. We've had Trump get in the States. There's a whole series of changes that have happened. We've had Malcolm Turnbull get in as our Prime Minister here in Australia. What are sort of the predictions that you see ahead for next year in 2017?
Yep, you're right. A lot of distractions. Predictions from my side of things is that the sun will rise and it will continue to rise, and you'll continue to eat your breakfast and you'll go to work and do what you've got to do. And, I think, look, there's always going to be these kind of distractions. If it wasn't that, it was, there was the GFC. There's always going to be something happening globally now that's going on, and it can distract you. And I think it's, going to be important to just to stick to your core things as what, you want to focus at in terms of your goals and what you want to achieve.
It's been amazing. I've been hearing a lot of agents say that right the way across their sections of the marketplace, there's 20% less stock on the market this year than last year and all of the above.
Yep.
And then I ask them the next question and I go, and does that also include the off-market transactions? Well, I don't know. And so they're actually buying into a story that they've heard somewhere and they actually believe that's the case. But the only market that you can control is the one that's in your head, between those two ears, about who you're speaking to, how you're having those conversations, what does that look like. I was working with one of our clients this morning on a black and white interview, and he's just listed his 16th auction so far for February campaigns for 2017.
Yeah.
So that's saying to me that there's plenty of opportunity if you actually just learn to really work ahead of the curve, 2 to 3 months ahead, rather than really worrying about what's going on. I see 2017 has got a great start. There's some real challenges there, though, in that there's only 7 auction Saturdays in the first quarter of 2017, and that's if you include February the 11th.
Yeah.
So if you're going to delay until February 18 as being the first kickoff, then that means that there's only 6 auction Saturdays. The October that we've just been through, there were 5 auction Saturdays alone.
Yep.
So nearly more auction Saturdays in October this year than there will be in the entire first quarter of next year. So it's very important for agents this year to be considering maybe leaving a little earlier in December and coming back a lot earlier in January to make sure that they're kicking campaigns so that come that February 11, that's January 11, maybe in terms of the 3 or 4 week auction campaign, to get those first run of open for inspections. Yep. Because then we head into April and then you've got Good Friday, Easter Monday, and then Anzac Day and my birthday all in a 3 week time frame.
And mine just after that. So.
Right, so.
Yeah, no, you're true. And look, I think, when you look at the real estate market recently and a little bit of a shift, it's almost like that December and January used to be regarded as when the market switched off. But if you look at the last few years, it hasn't been the case. We've been listing and selling properties right up to Christmas Eve. Yeah. And then the market, when we're opening properties on Jan 5, we're still seeing groups of 30, 40 and 50 attending open homes. So I don't feel that the December and January are still in that space. If anything, it's probably shifted more now to the July kind of August period when it seems to be a little bit quieter. Yeah. But December and January are now busy.
So I think that the big driver for a lot of people is about actually understanding how they list property for next year now.
Yep.
There's no doubt that we're in the throes of the last few days for any listing stock for auctions for this year, because they're quite short campaigns heading into Christmas. And really it's about getting properties either listed for sale or being in a position that you're doing something off market for a January or February auction date.
Yep. 100%. Yep.
So today we've got a whole heap of questions. So please submit your questions. You can do that on Facebook. You can do that on the Josh Phegan website. Wherever you're watching today's webinar, you put in the questions below and Matt and I are going to answer them as much as we can. And we've got questions from all around the world. So we're going to have a whole heap of fun with today.
Yep.
So Matt, let's jump in and start to just really understand that. I think that the big driver for a lot of people is that there's a lot of vendors that are selling today in November and December campaigns that are going to be coming into December looking for something to buy once they've sold and being able to find nothing. And that's why they're going to be getting on the phone to you and saying, look, what have you got available off market? Is there a chance we can go through something? And so that's how you'll do a lot of sales in December and January.
Yes.
I know that with a number of our coaching clients that they can sell up anywhere between 13 to 15 transactions in January alone as an individual agent if they've actually got the stock heading into January.
Yep.
So I think that good activities that you could be doing right now, I'd say to people, getting on the phone and ringing every single market appraisal that you've ever done in your entire career, calling every single one of your past clients and really ringing back through that seller hit list of all of the people that you think are going to be doing a trade or transaction. The other big one that we've discussed is also calling all of your landlords and having a conversation with them about their principal place of residence to give them an idea on what that's worth, as that might allow them to maybe have some additional equity, which might allow them to renovate, upgrade, extend, or maybe buy another additional investment property so they can retire a little earlier.
Yep.
And so I really think that it's about the energy that you bring to the table. And I think that this time of the year, a lot of agents are at risk of really running out of energy, running out of steam as they head into the November and it's starting to get warm here in Sydney, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is tough.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and look, another thing for us is really getting close to your key buyers, because a lot of buyers that you've been working with over a long period of time now are going to be picking up properties now, because there's obviously this finite time frame into Christmas, and a lot of buyers are thinking, gee, I've got to make this decision. But for some reason, there's that psychological kind of barrier where they don't want to flip into next year. So stay close to your key buyers as well, because you will notice that a lot of them will drop out and you'll need to kind of replenish them to sell those properties into January.
Yeah, so I think that the big conversation, there's also lots of things going on in the industry, changes in brands, and typically at this point of the year, people start to freak out a little bit without the stock and what do I do for next year. This is really an important time to be positioning yourself around just doing the work that actually counts. And I'd say to people, get back to getting on the phones, get back to getting appointments booked, get back to face-to-faces over the course of the next 4 weeks, and you will absolutely set yourself up for a great start to next year.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I would have thought right now, it's the perfect time. Like, I always like, there's the expression, when they zig, you zag. Bringing a really high level of energy and intensity now can be so different from what your competitors are doing, and your clients will notice that on the phone, and that's probably something we're going to answer a lot today. And a lot of the questions that will probably come through, energy and enthusiasm is probably going to be the answer to a lot of your questions that are going to come through.
And so let's have a bit of a look at some of our first questions. We've got a question from George over in Hunters Hill, and he's got a great one. He says, look, I'm struggling to track all my calls when I'm actually in the car or in between appointments and so forth. I'm sure there's a problem for others. How do you suggest I do that? What do you think, Matt?
Well, the good thing for George is that I like to hear is he's making the calls. So it's not really a problem in the fact that he's he's making some calls and doing a lot of business, which is great. So we all have that kind of thing. Well, a couple of things that I do is I use the voice memo system on my phone. So if there's something that I really want to do or know, like I've just made 6 or 7 calls, I'll just make a voice memo note. Were they buyer calls, appraisal calls, whatever they might be. Or when I get back to the office, I'll just go through the history of my phone and just track the text messages and calls made, and then I'd put that into the Josh Phegan system.
So it's a really simple thing around what we do here is to make sure we do great work. We're going to head over to Christchurch in New Zealand. They're obviously gone through some really significant changes in the last 48 hours, and our heart goes out to anyone who's involved in the situations that have occurred with the earthquakes in New Zealand. But we've got a question here from Mrs. Smith. She says, I'm working in a market where properties are sometimes taking up to 3 months to actually sell. So buyers have a large amount of choice and a large amount of thinking about building as opposed to buying an existing home. What strategies can you use to actually increase the clearance rate in such a market? What are your thoughts here?
Well, we've got a similar thing in the area where I work in Balmain, where there's a lot of people that kind of sit in that kind of middle ground of do we renovate or do we just go and buy something that's already done? So what we've done is really get quite close to the builders and understand the costs involved and the whole process, right from architectural drawings right through to the DA process, the time involved, and then at the end of the day, will the renovation actually deliver either what that person wants? Will it give them the family home and the size that they need, or will there be too many stairs? Or there's all of those kind of things which kind of extrapolate out when you really look at the design and everything like that. So when you really lay it down and put a time frame in place for somebody and realise that, hang on, this could be a 12-month plus exercise and it's going to cost you double what you anticipated, sometimes it starts to kind of think, gee, maybe it's a little bit better that you go and have a look at something which might be priced around that kind of renovation cost, and it makes a lot of sense to a client to go, gee, I don't have the time, I might go and start looking at those properties. And I think if you can introduce some properties that kind of appeal to them, they'll think, wow, that's something we should certainly keep an eye on.
And so we talk about the 3 motivations here, the owner motivation, the agent motivation, and the buyer motivation, and you need all 3 to come into perfect alignment. And what I'm hearing here is about, is it really the big focus on buyer motivation? It's just as important to have the agent motivation about actually wanting to bring a deal together. So what I'd be saying is that let's go out to each of our clients and ask a really simple question. Matt, would you like to be sold by Christmas? Because if you would, what we need to know is that there are now 10 other homes available in this price range, that one buyer has that choice. So what they're going to do is that if you price your home too high, what you're actually doing is making everyone else look like they're much better value. So I guess that we've got a decision to make. Do we need to be feature rich, or do we need to be price sensitive around where the marketplace is seeing, so then people can actually see value around what it is that we're doing? So I'd have a conversation. Let's see which owners have actually got the motivation, who would like to be sold by Christmas. Let's get the pricing points right. Maybe change up sale method to an auction, put a deadline on it. Maybe change the marketing pieces that you're doing so that you can shift that conversation. Because if you don't do that stuff, it's really difficult to actually get that into alignment. Out of all of the stock, if there's a lot of that's available at the moment, identify which of the homes in each price range that actually are the most saleable right now. And let's see what we can do with those particular ones. I'd also go back to compression selling. Matt, I know that you use that a lot. I think you used it on me when I bought my house, but try and get 2 or 3 buyers there at exactly the same time. So that then they actually perceive that there actually is a high level of competition. Right. And in a market where it feels non-competitive, that's how you make it competitive. Also too, that's a classic in that a lot of the prices had significantly increased in Christchurch, and also particularly Auckland off the back of the initial earthquakes that had happened. And that really drove the market quite strongly over the course of the last couple of years. And so for a lot of people, they were just of the opinion, let's just start keeping ownership here because we're increasing our property value by 100,000 every year. And so now, as that starts to come out and the market tends to get back to some more level of normality, there's some real shifts in the thinking that maybe building might be better than any of the above. So tap the psyche, identify the owner, agent and buyer motivation, and getting those together. I've got our next question, and don't forget, by the way, to put your questions below because Matt and I would love to answer them for you. Got one from John in Mill Park in Victoria. He says, any recommended opening statements that you could use in a newsletter or paragraphs to use inside of your marketing material?
Yeah, sure. Look, we do a lot of newsletters in our marketplace, and always the headline's a big place to start and get that right. I mean, we're only talking about this when you look at media headlines, for instance. Quite often you'll just see that big dramatic headline, and then quite often when you go in to read the content, it actually doesn't seem to kind of match the headline. So, but what do we call it? Clickbait. Clickbait. So not to say that you want to do that in your market, because you obviously want to be authentic, but at the same time, look at the headline and make sure that that's engaging and eye-catching, and then obviously you can make some highlight points throughout your newsletter.
I think the key here is ask the question that the customer's asking. So if, for example, are they asking, has the market topped out? Then maybe that actually might be the heading. Is at the end of the 5-year growth cycle that we've had. And literally, someone wants to read that, and that's what actually makes it intriguing. But I always think that a newsletter needs to be as long as it needs to be highly effective. So if you're trying to get across a really good quality point, you can really use some great techniques, and that's where the heading, so we used to use one many years ago with Alexander Phillips around is when's the next best time to sell now that spring's over? And people go, when is the next best time? Well, it's actually now in December and January, but is February the new spring? And so we used that headline for many years until a lot of agents had caught onto it, and then it sort of lost its luster. But what it was really trying to do is that to tap into the psyche of the human being at that particular point in time and what they were thinking. I usually then go with 3 or 4 dot points, and then the way that you end the marketing is just as critical. So now we usually use what we call the if-then technique. So if you're thinking about doing something, and even if you're not quite ready yet, and even if you want to wait for property prices to come down, and even if you want to find the perfect house to buy, then please call me on the following number, as we'd love to be of assistance to talk to you about the potential of an off-market sale at an above-market price. So the if, then, even if technique is a great way to put that at the bottom of all the dialogue, because it allows you to overcome the objections of the client. And I think that's a really important part. But never ever forget to the beauty of having a look at other advertisements from other industries. And there's some beautiful books that you can buy, which is like some of the greatest ads from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, for particularly the car industry. And some of the things that they used to do there was really amazing. We've got our next question coming in from Helen in Sunbury in Victoria. She says, could you advise what to do or say and not do or say to actually fit into a new agency? So when you've moved there, you're 40 plus and was not in real estate before, but with strong sales background in other industries, how do you actually really connect with other people in an office? And I think that's a great question for anyone that's changed brand.
Look, it really is. Look, I think first and foremost, be yourself. Bring in a good attitude and understand that the business culture that's existing. I mean, you're going to be a contributor to that as well.
That's
so
true.
How you come in and how you go about your daily business really then also becomes part of the culture. So if people kind of look at you and you're energetic and you're willing to help and you're there for support with others, immediately people are saying, oh gee, the mood around you will also lift. So, don't kind of wait to find your feet or anything like that. Just walk in there with the right attitude and you'll find that the culture kind of melds around you as well.
And I think that how you feel is how you make other people feel. So if you feel inferior or there's any levels of insecurity, then that magnifies. 100%. So what I would want to do is say, okay, great, well, I want to be friends with everyone. So maybe try and set up that you go to lunch every day with a different person in the office until you've, tell me a little bit about you. Where are you at? How can I help you? What are some things that I could learn from you? And try to actually really build good quality relationships with people. I think that makes a massive difference. Also, too, the really simple things about just understanding, is there anything I can do to help you?
Yes.
So have you got any overflow open for inspections? Would it be okay if I put out your boards for you? Is there any way that I could help you in your role as I learn my role, particularly when you're new into that real estate space?
Absolutely. Yep.
Now we head over to Parramatta in New South Wales. So
nice.
Much closer to where we are now.
Yeah.
So, and this is a great question by Samari. He says, what database software do you use? He's currently using Excel. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, look, I've used a few in our time, but we're currently with AgentBox, and like any database, it's as good as the information that you're going to put into it.
That's true.
And of course, the quality and time you spend making sure that the data is clean and regularly updated. So AgentBox works effectively for us.
Yeah.
Again, like we're agents, we're busy, we're probably not using all the features, but we are using it to, the best of our capability to get the best out of it at the moment.
We actually said this at List Sell Negotiate on Friday, that the best database is the one that you've got in front of you.
Yeah.
And really, ultimately, can you search it, and it does have the capability to be able to send out the communication pieces, the Excel, from HTMLs right the way through to SMSs, through to just normal plain text emails to people, because it looks great on mobile.
Yeah.
Most of our clients tend to use either AgentBox is one of the major ones. Rex is certainly how to go. There's certainly plenty of people that are on that. My desktop is very big with the big franchise groups. Yeah. So usually if you're sticking to one of those three, you're probably doing pretty well. Yeah. But it is certainly time to upgrade the infrastructure, because Excel was very good for 1984. There's some good conversations. So let's go to Newport in Victoria. Got a question from Theo now. He says that I find I'm spending a lot more time canvassing the neighbours of my recent sales, and a lot of them are really concerned about safety. What are your suggestions for elderly clients who want to improve their situation but fear the loss of the pension benefit? So this is actually about economic situations. If they sell the property, they may be an investment property. They might therefore have a gain. Yeah. There's a capital gains tax implication, and so there's always the sacrifice between the income that's coming in and the actual sale price of the home.
Yeah. Look, that is a tough one, I think too. And look, again, they're going to come down to the individual basis and, what that person could potentially do with the money.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound, morbid here or anything like that, but, how long that they've got of real quality enjoyment in their life moving forward.
It's true.
Because, again, hanging out for, so you don't lose your pension, but you might have $500,000 or more in equity sitting in a property, which can mean you can have a fabulous life for the next 15 years. Yeah. I know the decision I'd be making. I'd be like, who cares about the pension? I'm going to live my life. So, they're the kind of reality kind of conversations I'd be looking at.
It depends on the risk profile of the client. What have they gone through? What are the situations that they've got to? If they're left on their own and they're finding it tough to make decisions, then there might be some other things that they're looking for. And this is what I always say is that, you're walking to Betty's home and she's 89 years old. What's Betty's number one fear? Yeah. And it's not really about the sales process or the money or any of that sort of stuff. It's the fact that they've told her that when she goes to the assisted care nursing home, she has to hand in her driver's license as well. Yeah. And for her, that's about losing the perception of freedom that, she's no longer going to be able to go to where she wants to go. So I think the key is to really tap into it and say, so Matt, what are your concerns? What are your fears? How could I help you with that? And are you in a position that you'd be interested in potentially selling the asset, going and leasing somewhere? Yeah. And then you can get a new home every couple of years. Yeah. So then you can get the newest and the latest without having to pay for all of that, and be in a position that you can be a great tenant for someone and not have to worry about the maintenance and all the other external things that go on and allow someone else to do that for you. Yep. I think that's a really important part in the way that we go to work with people, is really get to the understanding of their situation.
100%. Yeah. With a scenario like that, I do think that's a real human kind of conversation. Just get down to the basics.
Yeah. So we've got a great question from Matthew over in North Narrabeen, up near your way in Manly.
I surfed this morning.
So I'm currently a sales assistant working under 2 other agents. I'd like to know whether you have any tips for fast-tracking myself, improving my worth as a standalone agent. This is a really important question, because we see a lot of assistants that sometimes don't get the opportunity for growth and sometimes don't chase the opportunity for growth inside of the existing teams.
I'll tell you about my experience, right? So, I was in the same position as Matthew some time ago, and I just went and did everything I could. I wanted to know about everything, so I went to every training course that was available to me. I went and watched auctions. I went and spent time with agents outside of our company, and I went and found out what the best were doing. So I did everything that I could to kind of pin myself against the best in the business and what was going on, and also looked outside of the industry. So obviously there's a lot of information available to you now. There's things like this today, which I never had the opportunity to do stuff like this, which was great. And then, really come in again. This is that energy and enthusiasm, offering to help in the office. And, there's always doors, but you've just got to find ways to kind of unlock those doors and get through them. And you're going to do a lot of that with with, you know, having a good level of intensity. But also, I think one thing that I know as an owner of a business is that the young people coming through in the industry, the thing that I admire the most is the people that turn up to work, they're always on time, they're always effective, they're always dressed well, you never have to repeat anything to them, they get it the first time. It's just showing that level of clarity and focus, which will make sure that you go a long way very quickly.
And I'll say that is it a skill set or a mindset? And one of the big things around a skill set is that we can teach you a lot of the basics, how to do a great open for inspection callback, how to do all the prospecting stuff, but learning your listing presentation is a massive changer for a lot of people. That really does change the game, because once you learn how to list, you learn the 15 questions, the 5 trial closes, the things that you specifically need to do, then it absolutely changes your confidence. Then at the mindset level, it's about making sure that you're continuing to read. And the number of people that like ultimately leave their entire professional development up to their boss is really scary. You got a problem, you type it in on Amazon.com, it'll come up with a book. And like literally you go read that book and actually grow as much as you can. And I think that really what people are looking for is that people have got great skill and great capability, but people that are actually hungry to learn. And I think that I read something the other day that, you know, more people die at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning than at any other time in the week. And you think about that because they go to work, right? You know, and that, like they've lost all energy for life. And this is what I'm saying to you, is that more people come alive than at Friday night come 5 p.m. You know, so really the key here is about getting that great growth and that great momentum, you know, so that then you can actually do that next part of the process. So we've got our next one now with Greg Hedger. He's working with Luton Property in Canberra in the ACT. Greg's a really good agent down there, doing some phenomenal stuff with a lot of the farm and regional lifestyle properties as well, working with Samantha and his team, and they've had a great relationship over time. What's the best strategy to really connect with sellers now for starting in the new year?
100%. Well, I think we've touched on a couple of these comments with that newsletter conversation around, you know, that is January the new spring, you know, is it the right time to be selling? Are the buyers actually out there? It's all those kind of things, I guess, getting to the fear of the seller is, I thought January was quiet, everybody's away on holidays and all those kind of things. So the reality is that it isn't quite like that. Yes, there are some people that go away, but guess what? You know, with the age of technology now, they're still getting email alerts on their phone. They're still, you know, people are property obsessed in this country. So they're still tracking and monitoring things. So if something does come up, you bet your life they'll be there to check it out.
You know, the amazing thing, one of my clients, their partner actually works in a large car dealership, and the highest number of cars that they sell on any day of the year is actually between the Christmas and New Year period. And that's because people have got a bit of spare time, they're out a bit looking around, they've got a bit of discretionary money, think, you know what, now might be a really great time to do it. And I think that it's starting to become the same with property, that because it's such a full-on year for such a lot of people, that there's a lot that they can do. So Matt, we've got a ton of questions still coming in, so feel free to put in your questions on Facebook or on the Josh Phegan website. Let's go and have a look at, I think that, you know, just to answer Greg's question here, the strategy, identify the people that actually want to do something. And say, Matt, are you thinking more next year? How does that look for you? And when is that timing going to be right? Because it's a really important part around what it is that you do. Okay. Let's go and have a look at our next question from Christine. She says, keeping it reality, reasons to call potential clients after you've appraised their property and they're only 1 to 3 months away from selling. To me, that's really about setting it up while you're at the appraisal. And I just ask a simple question and say, Matt, given that you're a couple of months away, how could I help you from here? And so, look, what I tend to do with my clients, if it's okay, is I might give you a call if there's a significant listing or sale that I think that you should know about. And also too, off the back of that, you know, what are you kind of hoping is going to change in the next 1 to 3 months that I can provide more value? Would it be of assistance to send down some details of some people that might be able to get your property prepared? Is there, you know, other things that might be able to happen as a part of that?
100%. And there's all little things too. I mean, there's all subtle changes always occurring in the market. You know, auction clearance rates. You know, buyer foot traffic through your open homes. What your team's doing. What you know, off-market sales. There's always a number of things that you can kind of reinforce to the client that you're highly active and you're on top of the market. And when they're ready to go, you're the person to go with.
So let's go over and have a look at Diane. She's got a great question from LJ Hooker. She said, what were the best takeaways from List on Negotiate this year?
Biased.
So you'd be biased?
No. Look, Josh is always pretty much on the money with a lot of the things that he talks about. You know, I think he's, you know, because Josh is good in the sense that he's across the market in all areas. So, you know, whilst we're in Sydney, we've been a little bit immune. We've seen, you know, 20% growth, you know, per annum now for 3 years running, whereas, you know, there's other parts of Australia.
And like, Port Hedland was 75% off.
You know, and, you know, people, you know, that we're talking here in Auckland in the UK where it's taking 3 months to sell a property. So, you know, I think anything that you're kind of listening to from Josh is always going to hit the mark because it kind of prepares you you for any market conditions. But more importantly, I think what I kind of took out of it is the energy, the enthusiasm, just getting the work done, having the technical ability, and just walking in every day with a set plan about what you want to achieve, so that at the end of the day you can walk out and say that was a 9 out of 10, or it was a 10 out of 10, or it was a 7 out of 10, or a 6.
Yeah.
Where did I go wrong? You know,
the interesting thing is that when we look at the feedback posted on Negotiate, the speakers that really resonated was not only yourself, Matt, about understanding about what it actually takes to be a highly successful agent, the number of text messages, emails, phone calls, and activities that are there, but also to Shannon Whitney was very polarising for a lot of people in his presentation, specifically about actually really understand what are we doing as an industry.
Yeah.
Is it if all the value is just at a portal level, then what are we doing in terms of how we actually present property? But most importantly, the conversations that we're having and how we respond back to buyers, the speed at which we do that, the type of information that we give.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truths there that some agents felt quite uncomfortable about. Their email replies are usually the things that are already on the website, or a link to something that's already on the website, or even worse than that is actually more photos that were already on the website. So let's see what the consumer's really getting at. And I think that the big secret when you saw the Phillips boys was really them talking about the importance of staying that level of energy on the phone and getting your scripting right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do 10 to 15,000 open for inspection callbacks during our career.
Yeah.
We can either do that well or we can do that poorly and then have to go and do other prospecting activities. Yeah. So let's do those 10 to 15,000 really well and make a massive difference in the process.
Yeah.
Graham's got a great question for us. He says, Josh and Matt, I'm wondering, your views on print versus internet versus radio advertising in rural markets.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And I think that here's the big driver. I was talking to Pat Houlihan from the Property Press in New Zealand and in Auckland this week. They've got the largest property press that they've ever done with over 330 pages of property.
It's amazing.
Which goes to show you that it's market by market.
Yes.
And I don't think that it's any one market at any one point in time. Matt, you're in inner city. There's been some changes there around what's even available at a press level these days versus internet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, from our side of things, the press seems to be, a weaker form of marketing tool for us. But things like, we've done it all. We've been on radio, we've tried everything. So, for our marketplace, the web is obviously the biggest cut through, but now obviously social media is taking a much more of a front position. Things like Instagram and all that kind of stuff are actually gathering a following. But I'd imagine the rural areas of Australia that print would certainly have some pretty good cut through.
The thing is, if you still have a publication and it's still reasonably priced, you should definitely be in there and owning space. If you're in a position where there is no press, well, your choices are narrowing. But you know what? Digital's also changing substantially. There's Facebook advertising, Instagram ads, the things you've been doing with YouTube video ads now as well. So I was, for example, looking at a video on YouTube recently, and all of a sudden one of my customers' ads actually appeared over the top of that. And I was geographically located in a space close to where they're actually working. So that's why I think it's a really important part around what we do.
Yeah, very much so.
Ben's got a great question. He says, how important is it for salespeople to plan the whole year in advance and have regular breaks to actually look forward to?
Look, that is, what you should be doing right now for 2017. You should have a very clear understanding of what it is that you want to achieve in terms of the number of listings that you're aiming for, which would then extrapolate out obviously to the number of appointments that you need, the number of calls that you need to make, the number of people you need in your database, and then obviously the processes around how you're going to go out and achieve that, how you're going to run your open homes, all of that kind of stuff it's just what we do. It is a numbers game, and the results do not lie. So the more calls that you make, the more appointments in your diary is going to achieve those outcomes. And then from a holiday perspective, I know how I am. I've got my 4 booked in, almost 2 years in advance at the moment. So,
certainly the dates, maybe not the venues.
Maybe not the venues, but I just know, from renewing energy, because this is, this is a 14-hour a day, 15-hour a day at times when it's really busy and you're operating at your peak level. So you need time to renew your energy.
So we've just closed questions, Matt. We've got a ton more to go. So if you're happy to stay on the webinar with us, let's jump in and do those as much as we can. The big question I've got for Ben there is that really I think that I've always worked that every 4 to 6 weeks you need something to look forward to. And if you've got something to look forward to, you're absolutely going to own it. People are going to buy your energy, but what's important is that some of your best ideas actually come when you're away from the game. So don't get too caught up in being in the moment right now. This is the problem with I think a lot of people is that they come really from a negative view. They're listening to other people rather than actually going out there and doing it themselves. And Seth Godin came up with a great quote: the best book that you'll ever read is the one you write yourself. So get out there, go and explore, and go and see some new things. So we've got our next question, which is coming from Kenry. He says, what's the best strategy to convert off-market clients, if you get somebody interested, to take them through to actually moving into a full campaign? And Matt, this is a big issue inside the industry, because a lot of people don't actually really understand what off-market is versus on-market, and what the importance is to getting it launched and not selling it before you've had photos and all the above taken.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, we do a lot of 30% of the transactions that we do in our business are off market. So, look, I guess again that's a sale by sale case, and depends again on the motivation of the client, whether or not they're open to spending some more money, whether or not the feedback that you've got from the buyers represents an area that you feel that you're going to have good competition in order to take it to the open market. I guess if it's a good thing to say to a client, look, I think from an agent's perspective, if you've got great buyer feedback and it feels as though the energy's right and the pricing feedback's right, that they will do better with an open campaign, then you just need to sit down and kind of work that through with your client.
So I think that the big conversation that we train in training is about the difference between what we call the list to launch. When we actually list a property, we're going to need certainly a contract of sale here in New South Wales, need to get the photography completed. But then the next component that then we're talking about is that what do we do leading up to launch? We want to try and get 1, 2 or 3 buyers through, see whether or not they see some value, see whether or not they perceive that they want to try and buy the property. If they do want to buy the property, they may want to proceed forward rather quickly with an offer. If they do want to proceed forward with that offer, then let's actually go and have that conversation about it. It's the first time the owners have sold, so let's at least allow them the opportunity to go to their first open for inspection. That buyer goes to that first open for inspection, they see the other buyers there, all of a sudden they feel that compelled to actually move forward with their offer, and then it's in a position as to whether or not there's actually offer and acceptance, and or whether or not you've actually got enough competition to actually take it live to market. And I think that the world has shifted in that the consumer today buys convenience in all other aspects. You only need to look at what happened to Uber, what's happened to the taxis, what happened to Blockbuster, Video Easy, Sanity Music Stores, HMV. Literally there's a whole myriad of it, Airbnb. The whole conversation is that from the consumer's perspective, how do we actually get the very best? And we know that people that actually want to buy, the ones that have just missed out, they've been to several properties, they're in a position they actually need to buy before Christmas, they've got timelines to work to. Let's go to our next question. This kind of relates. This is from Abby in Melbourne. She says, I've got prospective vendors, a few of them, that are actually saying that they want to do something in February or March, but I'm actually having trouble to getting them to commit now. And this is always interesting because, as I always say that Christmas dinner will taste a lot better if you've already got all of the agency agreements already signed before you go away. So what can you do, I guess not to induce, but to get yourself in a position that you can feel certain that you've actually got that business secured, rather than it being out there and that someone else might be able to tout for that to win the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, from our side of things, it's about positioning buyers, because you know that there's obviously a finite time remaining until Christmas now, and then there's going to be a lot of leftover buyers. So what you want to do is obviously speak with your clients there and say, look, I want to know that with confidence that we've got yours scheduled for an auction, whether or not it be in February or March, and we know that we've got the buyers in order to facilitate a sale for you and create competition immediately. In order for me to do that, it would be good to know that we've got the agreement sorted out, so that any of these buyers that might be out there looking to make a decision on an inferior home or doesn't suit them right now, I can actually pull them away from those particular sales and then have them set to go and ready for your property next year.
So Mike Munsey's actually got his whole team, I know, in Ringwood in on today's webinar, which is great, watching us today. He says best practice for listing properties in late November, early December for launch in early 2017. Interesting, the dialogue, approach and common objections. They'd say, look, we're thinking more next year. So look, and is it about when you sell or when you settle? Because if it's about when you sell, or if it's about when you settle, then what happens if we get a buyer today? What would you want me to do? So I'd always say that, Mike, the big thing here is always using hypothetical situations. And the conversation I'll be saying, look, there's a lot of people that are thinking about doing something next year. The timing next year is really critical, because we believe if you get into mid to late March, there's going to be a lot of Super Saturdays with people panicking about Easter. So we actually believe that January and February are going to be where we're going to see some of our strongest sale prices. So what I will be doing with you is, could we at least get a copy of our contract organised, getting it ready so that we know that we're doing, and just getting a basic agency agreement in play between now and the start of next year. So we don't need an auction date or any of those things, but just a basic agency agreement, so that should we have a buyer, that we have the opportunity to know what we're instructed to talk to them about in relation to price, and that we've got a basic fee agreement in place so we know exactly what we're doing. And so then from our point of view, if we get some buyers that have missed out from other campaigns, we have the opportunity to be able to go and show them. Now, that basic agency agreement, once you've got that in play, that gets upgraded later on to the auction agency agreement with a date, with the additional marketing, all of those things. But get what you need and get it organised. And sometimes it's simple things. Can we at least get a copy of the contract organised? Can we get our home styling company through to get the property stylised? Could we get the photography taken now whilst the property's looking great before it starts to heat up too 100%. Much?
Yeah, look, this is a great time of the year, in fact, to do all of that kind of stuff, all the prep work and have everything set and ready. I think a lot of people are mentally ready to make that decision to list with you now. They just don't know the process. So I think what Josh has said is bang on. You just need to kind of have those more detailed conversations with them to say, look, this is what we do. This is how the timeline works. This is what our recommendation would be. This is the kind of buyers that are around. Let's get everything prepped and ready now so that you can decide to pull the trigger whether or not it's on Jan 5, Jan 10, Jan 15, whatever it might be. But as long as you've got everything set and ready, you're good to go.
So then we've got a great question from Namata in New Zealand. She says, some things have really changed in that marketplace in Auckland, finding it a little bit slow and a little bit tight. What are some ways of getting listings? And when they actually do get listings, they find them hard to sell. So is there any good scripts, for calling out, whether or not that be cold or any of the above? Well, to me, this is just a big conversation about building a bigger pipeline than you'll ever need.
Yes.
And that's what I say to you is that if you actually went to a brand audit or a marketing audit, what are you actually putting out there? So we know that with Matt, every single week on a Thursday morning, we're going to get his weekly update. There's a 1.5 minute video about what's happening in his area. I know that he's going to be making 60 to 70 connected calls every day, with a goal to try to get to a minimum of 3 appointments. If you're doing those 3 things, business is really simple. And I think that what you want to think about is that where does your customer hang out before they they need you? I know that in your business, you've had a couple of your agents, Pete Gordon, for example, down at the local school fete or school fair, where they've auctioned off their services to sell a home, and the proceeds of that sale has actually gone specifically back to the school. And you look at that, and it's actually really about understanding how you generate your leads. The market's in your head, and really at the end of the day, you need to understand what's currently going on. So this is where agents' market knowledge is a terrible thing in this industry, that people don't think about going to their competitors open for inspections. You should go to as many of the open homes as you can, learn pricing, understand what actually sells in your area, what's the difference between water view, waterside, waterfront,
south,
north, all of the above, and how that actually works to be able to get some good results. Next one is then from Catherine Hawkins. She's in North Sydney.
North Sydney,
So she says, how do you reach out to absentee or out of area clients? And that's a big one, certainly for the apartment market.
100%. Look, we do a range of things, and again, this is the beauty of the internet and obviously electronic mail pieces and things like that. So you need to understand what it is that you're doing well, that you need to kind of reach out to those absentee clients. If a lot of them are apartment owners, for instance, we do an investor report, letting them know about great things that are coming up that could be a great investment property, what's happening in the apartment market. We're obviously doing weekly videos and all those kind of little pieces, just so if you are absent from the market, you feel as though you're very much in touch with your core market and everything that's going on in that area.
So this is a great question from Lloyd from John Craig down in Melbourne. He says, what are some of the good reasons to sell before Christmas rather than wait? And Lloyd, the big thing for me is that we currently know how the market's running. We've got auction clearance rates, pretty much around the 80% here, both in Melbourne and Sydney. And this time last year, we were hitting out 58 to 62%. So right now we've got some certainty. There's no major legislation changes that are currently slated in terms of changes with APRA on any of that stuff that really got impacted last year to significantly change auction clearance rates. So I'd be saying, look, Lloyd, we're operating in a position that I know what's going to be happening in the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, specifically because there's nothing being slated that's going to be any significant changes. Come the new year, we're in a new world. Trump gets in on the 20th of January. How the market reacts to that, some of the decisions that get made between now and then, we enter into a new level of uncertainty. So I guess it's really your choice, Mr. Mizzano, what's best for you. I think, Lloyd, don't be too focused about trying to get it on now. Be in a conversation that you can actually open it up a little bit in the way that you got to work with a client.
And can I just add something there too? Also at this time of year as well, what we tend to see is there's a lot of buyers that have had that, looking for that last 6 months, and they just want to get something secure before Christmas. And there's that little bit of extra intensity and urgency on their behalf to get a deal done.
Andrew from Brisbane, you got a great question. He says, any tips on actually getting listings faster without open homes? And it looks like a cure-all and a bit of desperation at this time of the year, because Andrew, I think you're asking that question for about 90% of the real estate agents in Australia. The secret to it is really, at the end of the day, is about having a lead generation cycle well ahead of the curve. Days on market, there's another measurement, days to market. How long does it take in terms of your sales pipeline? And there's a great quote here that the customer will buy your services to sell their home when they are ready, and it's your sales process that gets them ready.
Yeah.
So what is the motivation? Like, for example, do you send out a weekly report on everything that's happening in your marketplace, the new properties that have come to market, the properties that have been sold, what's actually happening at the auctions, the number of bidders that were there? What are the things that you're talking to them about, why timing is critically important, and actually start to give people a reason to act.
Yeah,
not that just because you need listings before we get to the end of the year.
That's right. Yeah, creating the urgency is a big one.
Yeah. So one of our favourite clients, we've got Rod Young at Rich and Renton.
Yeah.
He says something pretty interesting. He says, how often do you have sales meetings and how long do they last? Do you have an agenda?
Yeah. Okay.
Thoughts on this?
Yeah. Look, it depends on how big your team is, of course. Yeah. But look, I do think they are important. So we just have one weekly. We try to cover off everything in about 15 to 20 minutes in terms of new stock, what's going on, any buy movement or anything like that, new listings. We send out a lot of stuff through our team, our weekly sheet. What's being listed across our offices. What buyers are buying and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of keep a very kind of inclusive idea of what's going on around our marketplace within our team. But we, importantly from our side of things, we get together. All of our agents to do a call session for 2 hours every Thursday, and that's probably the biggest thing that we do in terms of the agent interaction, sharing information, understanding what's going on in the market. Somebody that's up can boost somebody that's might be having a bad week, and those kind of things. They're very important for us.
And the big thing too, there was a book that recently we've both read, which is called Meetings Suck by Cameron Herold, and he says something pretty cool. He says you need an agenda for every meeting. Each item on the agenda needs to have a time limit, and so 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for each of those individual components. So the meeting actually runs to time, and a good meeting with a great agenda that's actually circulated prior allows everyone in the team to actually think about what their contribution is going to be in that meeting to make sure that meeting actually runs smooth. It's certainly something we've been working a lot on in our team to actually get better meetings more consistently. We just had our quarterly team meet yesterday, and we had an exceptional time there because we're really focused about what it is that we were doing because we're running it to the time limits. Next question, couple more to go, Matt, and then we're finished for today. But sticking with us, we've got Andrew who says here, how can I win over a conservative client who's been selling his house for 1 year with 2 agents and he's known for 20 years? So he's in a situation that it sounds like the property's already listed with other agents, has been so for a year. What does he do to actually go to win the business? So I think that, to me, that's just the question. Say, Andrew, I've got to ask you a question. Is this where you thought you'd be a year down the track? Yeah, because if it's not where you thought you'd be, what would it take for you to give me a go? And I think that really, it's about strategy, it's about process, it's about passion, it's about brand, it's about understanding how we're going to go and market the property and what we're going to do differently. And if you want to be sold by Christmas, we're going to need to move pretty quickly. Or if you want to wait till next year, then let's pull it off the market today, have a chance to do some off-market stuff and relaunch it come January for a February campaign, and let's get this moving here. And I think that owner motivation, agent motivation, buyer motivation keeps cropping up in everything that we do.
100%.
Laura Gunn, she says, so what daily rituals or habits do you focus on regarding prospecting?
Okay, so mine is always start at the beginning of the day with, I've got my hot list of people that I want to call, so that's either appraisals, hot buyers, my current clients and everything like that. So I've got a plan in place that, we try to kind of stick into the office up to about 11 a.m. So that's all prospecting, and so that could be buyer calls, as I was mentioning, pipeline calls, that type of thing. So I would be personally trying to, get through around, 50 to 60 calls in the morning and making sure that I've got 3 or 4 appointments booked, somewhere through that course of the day or into the next couple of days.
So I have a really simple personal philosophy on this in that I want to eradicate all of the decisions that aren't absolutely essential to me doing something great today. So that means that, for example, white shirt, dark blue suit, I've worn that for about 5 years. I don't want to have to make a decision as to, is this stripe going to work or not for me today, right? So the secret to it is that actually what are the critical decisions that are going to set you up for success? When my car leaves that garage in the morning, I do not think about anything else but either being in front of the client or face-to-face or on the phone. They're the only 2 activities, either face-to-face or on the phone. And then that way, by doing that, it allows me to keep really fresh around what's critically important. I also think too that I don't go back in at home at night until I've finished all my calls for the day. So it's like the simple disciplines that set you up. And I think, you know what? No coffee until the call session's done. I actually don't drink coffee, but I think that like the big driver is that if that's something that you like, reward only comes after effort. And don't be in a position that you're having the rewards without putting in the effort.
I agree.
It's a great one.
Yep.
Our second last question here is from Maria. She says something pretty interesting. She says, what are the best qualities or skills that a young real estate agent can develop who wants to be a great salesperson in a year and a half? And you know what?
Yep.
I want to take the word young out. What are some of the best qualities or skills for a real estate agent that they can develop now who actually wants to be a great salesperson, in a year and a half from today?
Yeah, sure. I think you've touched on a couple of these straight off the bat, but having a really good technical foundation. So from everything from the quality of your calls, setting up your daily structure and your routines, being able to go and list property, having great market knowledge, running a great open home, being a great person, face to face. I mean, there's so many little subtle things, but I think the technical foundation is very important. So spending some time with somebody like Josh. So Josh, we were only talking about this. In 30 days, he can teach you the scripts, dialogues, all of that processes to get you at operating at a tier 1 level agent. Then the next is going to be up to you. It's about understanding your market, the demographic, who you're pitching towards, all that market information and knowledge is just critical.
And I look at a lot of people, I think, in this industry look for instant gratification. I think the rest of society does too. And then we want the magic pill or the magic potion. And what I'm going to say to you is that there is a real skill to learning what it actually takes to navigate the situations of the day. And I would be saying to you that the best skill that you can develop is that confidence in self, learning how to learn. That's the most important bit. What are you reading? What are you going to go and see? And learning actually, getting on the phones. And the number of people that have shadowed you this year, and I almost feel sorry for the number of times I've called you and said, can someone come and watch you, who've come to see what you do inside of that brand, and they walk away and they go, wow, it's really intense, isn't it? Like, well, actually there's an intensity because there's a real decision to want to be someone and want to do something as a part of a brand. So Matt, we've got our final question now. This is from Colleen. She says, what's the best way to manage market and get a great outcome for an off-the-market property? Well, Colleen, I'm going to say to you is that whether or not it's on or off market, the secret is that you must have a system, a process, or a way of doing things. And to me, that's about making sure that you never take a property to market without getting it photographed, without having a legal documentation, without having your agency agreement in play. And that when you do take it to that point, get a couple of people through, but make sure that every single property launches. And the reason that I have a perception on that is that I want the signboard out the front. I want the listing on the major real estate websites. I want it in the newspaper to actually make sure that for that owner, that we have absolutely done every single thing that we could to absolutely get the very best price the market would pay. There are going to be some circumstances where you will sell prior. There will be some that are going to be done well prior to it actually going to market. There will be some that will be done on the day of the auction. But what is in the best interest of the client? And I think if you do that, you're going to make some massive changes.
Yeah, for sure. And it also comes back to the client's motivation as well. Like, is the price right? Because you're always going to have a great sale. If the client's motivation is right and you've priced it correctly, whether or not it is going to sell, quickly within a few days, or whether or not you are going to take it to market, it's going to be a sale of success. So, I mean, they're probably the two critical things is working with your client.
So, Matt, thanks so much for being on our live webinar today. I know that's gone everywhere across the interwebs, which is pretty cool. But we've got some big announcements to make about what we're doing at the Josh Phegan Company. We're really changing a lot of things up. So literally the daily email is going to stop come this Friday. So this Friday, for the next week, we're actually shifting to doing a free course that we're sending out to everyone about specifically on what you can do to become a much better agent as we finish this year. Very short 5, 6, 7 minute videos, but a video every day, including Sunday, from Friday on what it takes to be a great agent. And at the end of next week, we're launching something pretty special, which is how you can get access to every resource that we've ever produced in training. Audio, video, the whole thing, including all of the new blueprint content, and also in addition to that, all of our new checklists and resources that we've just been producing. So it's a big moment for us, and I know that a lot of agents around the country have been using that to help them to become that $1 million agent in a much shorter period of time than ever before. So guys, if you've got any questions at all, we'd love to hear your feedback after today's survey. There's a chance to be able to jump in. I'm also send out a replay to those of you that have registered for today's live webinar, so you get a bit of a chance to replay that and see some of the great gems that Matt shared with us in today's live webinar. So thanks so much for being with us.
No, that's a pleasure, and I just want to wish everybody the best of luck. Hope you have a great finish to the year, and 2017, I'm very optimistic about it. I think it's going to be a great year, and it's people like that are doing things like this that are really going to make a strong headway, because there's a lot of people out there distracted, and I think if you can kind of stick to the path, you're going to do exceptionally well.
And I say to people that when you look out 25 years from now and what you want to achieve in the course of your life, regardless of the situations, there's a whole series of things that you can't control. There's a whole series of things that you can. Get good at staying focused on the things that you can. And because average doesn't win in business anymore. No. And it's really time to step it up and really be that agent you're capable of being. So thanks for being a part of our webinar.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See ya.